Good afternoon, Bruin and Hokie fans, and welcome to episode 10 of season 2 of Sports Talk with Rags. And today, here we are definitely joined by a longtime friend of my brother and mine, Senor Gaines. Here has joined us. Mr. Gaines, how you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Couldn't be better.
Right. Hey, I certainly appreciate your time, not only with your coaching and your athletic accomplishments, but like I said at the beginning, with being a longtime friend of mine and my brothers. Appreciate your time for coming on.
Thanks. No problem.
All right. All right. So hey, so let's uh let's start at the beginning. I know that with having Mr. Brandiff on back in the fall, he talked about how you ran track there at Churchland, transferring from Crestwood.
hmm We It was a very unusual and valuable, as it turned out, lesson to have lived through that period between segregation and integration. I learned a lot, and when I got to Churchland, I had never played football organized before and had never run track either. So my gym teacher actually talked me into running track, and I was more interested in playing baseball. But I did end up uh, playing baseball and running track in that year that I was at Churchland.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And then after Churchland, having an opportunity to go and be the first Black scholarship athlete there at Virginia Tech.
That was a very interesting set of circumstances there. Tech was getting pressured to integrate its athletic program. They were one of the last, certainly one of the last big programs in Virginia to integrate. But when I got there, it was a very interesting. It was more like an experiment for them. Nobody really cared as much if I succeeded or not. If I had failed, there would have been some people, I do believe, who would have said, "See, I told you so. It wasn't going to work." And so I had to make sure that worked. So that's just one reason why I worked so hard to make a go of that.
Right. Yes. And I know that you held some records there at Virginia Tech's track program.
Well, my freshman year, actually, I broke their long jump record. It had been set in 1927, I think. So it was a 40-year-old record, and I broke it. But the interesting part about that was that jump also qualified me to go to the national championships, which that year were held at Cobo Arena in Detroit.
Mm.
My coach asked, and this was the message that was sent. My coach asked that I get a decent pair of warm-ups because we had no decent warm-ups because track wasn't a big deal at Tech at the time.
Right.
And he was denied.
Mm.
They wouldn't even get a good set of warm-ups. They actually instead offered a pair of basketball warm-ups.
Mm.
And I said, no, you keep that and I'll just wear the old ones. And so I went on and competed in the old ones. But the experiment piece was a very interesting set of circumstances because I felt like I was always being watched. But that was especially true where I wouldn't have expected it, and that was in the athletic administration at the time.
Right. Yes. And then after Virginia Tech, there before you got into teaching, served there in the Army, right?
Yes, did a short stint there. Vietnam was winding down. They were actually cutting back on the number of officers that they had in the Army at the time, shipping them back from Vietnam. So I got an early out. The day I out processed, in fact, they out processed 18 full bird colonels that same day. So to let you know how many people they were getting rid of at the time. But it just so happened that same year, I got out in April of that year. Western Branch opened its doors to the new building in September of that same year. And they needed a Spanish teacher,
Right.
a track coach, a
Yeah.
football coach, and a cross country coach. And guess who fit the bill on all four accounts? It was too coincidental to be coincidence, you know?
Right. Yes. And so that's how you you got your start there, being part of the Bruins teaching staff, and also as part of their coach there with the track, cross country, and then their football program.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, and with the football, that's Mr. Brander was the head football coach at the time, right?
No, actually, when I got to Western Branch, the first coach there was Dick Arculin.
Oh, okay.
Coach Art Brandriff was the principal by then,
Oh,
and
okay.
new school, new principal. It was a nice setup, and it seemed like it was, like I said, too coincidental to be coincidence for me,
Right.
because I had already known Mr. Brandriff
Right.
since high school, and he actually extended the offer for me to take that job almost sight unseen. All he knew about me was the 1 year that he coached me at Churchland and what he had read about what I had done at Virginia Tech. So
Oh,
it
okay.
was it was an awfully big favor that he did me then.
Right. Yes. And let's see. And then also with laying the foundation there for Western Branch track and cross country, because here, like the last 10, 15 years, I mean, those programs have certainly done well there at Western Branch.
I'm very proud of Claude Tukenney. Actually, shot it to the moon. After a while, but he's probably one of the best high school track coaches I've ever seen in my life. But he really, really motivates kids. He really cares about kids, and it seems odd that we started out during my earlier track years winning cross country championships and winning a lot of distance races. We always had a surplus of great distance runners, never a whole lot of great sprinters. When Kenny came in, he trained sprinters and hurdlers, and that's actually where the points are. I wasn't interested in winning championships. I was just interested in making kids better, and I just didn't have the depth in the sprints. And for instance, I coached track there for more than 20 years, but
Right.
we never had a champion 100-meter or 200-meter sprinter in all those years. We had some people that finished second, but we never won a 100 or 200-meter race at the district level or higher.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Because I know when we moved up here in August of '87, and my brother Mike had you there as a freshman. Freshman there, Spanish 3 class. I know that you were track and cross country at at that time, and then when I came into the high school, I remember you still coaching there in the cross country program.
It was those were good years, and I had during those times I had already settled in that teaching was something that I not only could do, but I think teaching and coaching was where I was supposed to be. It took me about 3 or 4 years before I realized that that was the truth, because I got into education as an afterthought more than anything else. But as it turns out, it was where I was supposed to be.
Right. Yes, and I see that the Portsmouth Sports Club named you high school coach of the year there in '87, and then in '90 named a Chesapeake teacher of the year, and know that definite successes both in the classroom and then also out leading the student athletes.
In every role I've ever played, and this has been since I was just a little kid, and my parents would have told you the same thing. I always was interested in pleasing other people. And so if I landed in an education situation, my pleasing people meant pleasing the kids in front of me. That means I had to make them successful to please myself. I call that glorious selfishness because I actually get more out of it than they do. But it helped me to pour everything that I had into what I did. But pouring all of that in for so long, like for those 4 decades, also made it easy to turn my back and just shake the dust off my heels and walk away from it, because I know I gave it all I had during the time I was there.
Right. And I know that my brother and I definitely got to know you and Coach Jay a little bit better with both of you guys leading the Fellowship of Christian Athletes there at Western Branch.
Western Branch, I ended up being at some of the finest schools in our system, and then ended up in being in a pretty good system overall, as it turns out. So at Western Branch, I met some of the finest teachers I've ever met in my life, and of course, the icing on that cake was all of those fantastic kids that I met. Mike was one of them. He was just one, and it's almost no challenge at all. All you have to do is present the material, and they'll suck it right up. And I had a whole lot of kids that way, and so it made teaching. It's always challenging, but it made teaching a lot easier and certainly a lot more gratifying because you see these results where kids get out and do just amazing, fantastic things. But it's not a surprise at all.
Right. Yes. And let's see. I know here. Let's see. So after your time in the classroom at Western Branch, then you were an administrator there at Great Bridge High School.
There was an interval there of 3 years where I was an assistant principal in administration at the tech center.
Oh, okay.
And that was a different sort of kid. That was a hard-working blue-collar kid who didn't necessarily want to go to college. They wanted to go to school afterwards, but mostly in the trades. And I met a whole different kind of kid there. But I enjoyed that just as much. It was something different, something interesting. And again, those down-to-earth kids actually gave me a different perspective of students. The majority of whom were unlike any kids that I had seen in Western Branch. Those kids, the majority of them were college bound, of course.
Right. Yes, and I know that when I started the apprenticeship at Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and I went up to the ball field at Western Branch to see a high school baseball game against Great Bridge. You had moved on to Great Bridge, but since you still lived in the area, you came by, to watch high school baseball, and you definitely supported the student athletes at no matter what school you were at.
That actually, like I said, was part of that glorious selfishness. Nothing pleases me more than watching young people succeed. I think, and I tell people it's my drug. Young people are. And when I got to Great Bridge, and you'll know this guy,
Yeah.
one of the first people I met was Mike Kadire, who just marched into my office one day and introduced himself, and he sat down and we had a chat. And I thought, my goodness, if all the kids here are like this guy, then I've fallen into a tub of butter for real. That's unbelievable great kids. And the staff there too was at least as good as that at Western Branch. So again, I landed in a situation where I had a whole lot of great people around me, surrounded by talented, skilled, caring people, and actually kids who were really performers as well. So it was a perfect place to be. And
Right.
A lot of them, well, you know me, I still stay in touch with a lot of those kids to this day. And that is my joy in life.
Right. And I know that the book that my parents, my brother, and I both have a copy. You shared your experiences with about 40 students. They're 40 stories high.
I did, and I was trying when I got towards the end of my education career, I wanted to share with people in the public because even then there was a lack of proper appreciation for educators and coaches. So I just wanted them to know what it was like. Now, all of those stories, if you've read the book, are not happy endings, but neither are all your encounters with students and teachers in the school system. So it was a real life presentation. And of those 40 stories, actually, I think last count, about 9 of those people in those stories have passed on for one reason or another. There have been accidents and catastrophic diseases and all kinds of things. But I wanted the world to know that there are still great stories going on, and you don't have to graduate as a valedictorian. You don't have to be a superstar athlete to have success and to be happy and live happy, successful lives.
Right. Yes. And I know here recently, when I reached out to you to get you to come on, and I know that you were out at Blacksburg and Virginia Tech. You got into their Hall of Fame, years back, but I know that you just came back recently from Blacksburg with being honored at a basketball game and interviewed there by the announcers while the game was on TV there, the ACC network.
That was a very interesting thing. I was not prepared when I walked out on to the court at in the middle of that game for the response that I got from the fans. Those kids, mostly students, they didn't know who I was, and yet they were out there chanting my name, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. And I'm saying I was just blown away by that, and I contrasted that with the situation when I was there originally. Because I would have been viewed with suspicion and perhaps disdain, a little bit too, and because the 4 years I was at Virginia Tech, I never had a black teammate on the track team. Neither did the first black basketball player. He never had a black teammate. And so times were very different then. So to sit on that panel yesterday and listen to some of the things that those other people were saying were just otherworldly to me. I could not imagine the things that I was seeing. And I shared a story with them that was without a doubt the most moving thing that has ever happened to me. If you don't mind, I'll share it.
Yeah, go ahead.
They had me back up at Virginia Tech to speak at the Black Alumni Reunion. They hold it every other year. And one year I was guest speaker there. And I shared with them about how the first 2 years at Virginia Tech were the loneliest years of my life. I, like most black people, were very social, but there were no black people there. Being the first black athlete there also meant being the only black athlete there. So those were lonely times. And so I prayed a lot. God, why in the world did you put me in this place? Why in the world would you put me here? Why here? This was 35 years later when I'm speaking to this Black Alumni Reunion. And I related to them that story about praying all the whys. And then a voice came to my head, and the voice only said one word. The voice said, look. And I looked out in that audience, and there were actually more black football players than there were black students on the campus at the time. There were black professors, black deans of schools, people who were professionals and heads, CEOs of international businesses, and all of these black faces around me. It was such an emotional experience that I actually broke down and hands on knees crying, because all of a sudden there was the answer to all my whys. It was sitting right in front of me. And I realized that any suffering that I went through was all of a sudden right there in front of me more than worth it. It was more than worth it. And then again, I get the opportunity to listen to those star athletes that I was on the panel with just recently. And I see that, and now I cannot complain anymore about any hardship that I had, because the reward has been just overwhelming. That was, next to the birth of my children, it was the most emotional moments of my life.
Yes, yeah, and also with having this, this platform here, I was able to have Frank Beamer and Bud Foster, and then also Mike Burnup there, with being a Tech alum and being part of the Tech radio broadcast.
I saw all of them when I was up there recently. I saw Frank and Bud. I saw John Boleyn. And another guy who's a good friend of mine, Jared Ferguson. He was a fullback, and he's on the coaching staff. He's on the strength coaching staff there now. And he's a good friend. As a matter of fact, he married a girl who was a student at Great Bridge when I was there.
Oh, okay.
And they're doing well too. So I'm convinced that life is really all about relationships. And because the memories are what make relationships so great. You talk to a person on their deathbed, and that's what they want to talk about. They want to talk about their relationships and the memories that they had with people that they loved. And so it must be important. If it's the last thing they want to talk about, it's got to be important. So I cherish my relationships, I cherish my memories, and I try to create as many good ones, positive ones, as I can wherever I go. It's not always possible, but in those cases where it is, I try to make the most of it.
Yes, and Mr. Gaines, since when you came to Western Branch there in the early '70s, and you were part of the football program. I mean, now with a Western Branch alum, leading the football program, Rashad Cook, and this year the team ended up winning 10 games and
Mhm.
going all the way to the regional championship game. It's exciting to have Western Branch football have a successful year.
People think that kids have changed. Kids haven't really changed. Kids respond to the same thing. All the years I was at Western Branch for 21 years, and every year, and I learned this in retrospect, looking back. Young people look at the adults around them and they demand. They don't request. They demand something of them. They say, "Tell me who I am." And if we are smart, we'll tell them that they're more than they think they could ever be. Tell me who I am. They want to know. And if you don't give them a good role model, if you don't show them that they are something fantastic, they'll go out and create an identity for themselves that you probably won't like. So you tell them good things, and then when they come through, they surprise themselves and they end up rewarding themselves. But the biggest reward really is yours, and you learn how powerful a thing encouragement is, because nothing makes educators and coaches happier than watching their chargers fly. As a matter of fact, Jeffrey Artis Gray, the guy who ultimately broke my long jump record at Virginia Tech, was a
Mhm.
kid that I coached when he was at Western Branch.
Wow.
And so the bigger thrill to me was to watch him break that record.
Right.
I'm not so much about records. For him to come along and be the one to do it, it's especially special.
Right. Yes, and Mr. Gaines, how else have you been enjoying life here with retirement these days?
Right now, I do some motivational speaking, but it's something I can do at my pace. Of course, COVID has thrown a wrench in that to a certain extent, but I do that. But most of all, I enjoy just relaxing and fishing, doing that, and not worrying about too much. Basically, going around touching base like with people like you and some of the kids who have moved to other parts of the world, and just staying in touch with them. And I can relax and enjoy retirement basically because, like I said before, if you give it all you got while you're in the game, when you come and sit down on the bench, you can kick back and relax for a while. I'm on the bench now, and as a matter of fact, I've gotten off the bench and I've gone and sat in the stands, and I'm not coming back down. So I'm just relaxing and enjoying life, and the growth of my grandkids,
Right.
and watching my wife spoil them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right, and hey, thanks again for your time. And any last minute thing here for a student athlete that's listening, or just or a student there, that will be listening to this. Any words of encouragement here for the younger generation, that the future leaders.
sure. There's one thing that I always say to young people, and that's to not get caught up in the world's way of seeing things. The world will tell you, uh, get a good job. Why? So they say, go to a good school, make good grades, so you can get a good job. But the whole idea is so you can make more money. If you tell a child to be successful, nowadays they're going to equate that with money. What students taught me is the most important lesson they taught me. Students taught me that the most important thing is not success. the most important thing is significance. And that significance lies in your willingness to go out and create those same relationships we were just talking about. Because, like I said, a person on their dying bed wants to talk about their relationships and their memories. So you are successful for the ultimate goal of generating more relationships, because that's where the reward of life lies, not in the success. Things get old and you'll want bigger, better things. You get a 30-foot boat, you're going to want a 40-foot boat next time. Or same thing with cars and houses and everything else. But friendships and relationships don't work like that. Every time I go back and meet with my old teammates and everything, it's like a refreshing tonic to get together and talk about the same old stuff that we've rehashed a dozen times already, but it's fun to rehash it again because they're your buddies and they're your friends, and memories are what it's all about.
Yes. And so, Mr. Gaines, thanks again. And since you were at Western Branch for 21 years, I guess when our sister came up to Western Branch, you had already moved on to the tech center. So that's why a third Ragsdale didn't have you as a Spanish teacher.
My loss. My
So,
loss.
well, hey, Mr. Gaines, thanks again, and appreciate you coming on, and appreciate your time.
Sure. I still owe your whole family. I'll be indebted to you guys for a while. Great memories there.
All right. Well, hey, whoever's listening and out there in Virginia Tech, Western Branch alum, Great Bridge alum, or there at the Tech Center when Mr. Gaines was there, today's guest was a longtime friend, Mr. Gaines, sharing his story. And so thanks again. And that's a wrap here for today's episode.
Thanks a lot, bud.
Okay.